Number one, Mr. James Crabb.
Number one, sir.
This morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall be having further meetings later today.
Mr. Cran.
Would my right honourable friend care to take this opportunity to assure everyone, but particularly foreign businessmen and tourists, and indeed almost everybody else who comes to the United Kingdom, that they have been grossly misled into thinking that coming into the United Kingdom is indeed a dangerous occupation. Would he like to confirm that using British aircraft and using British airports is indeed almost as safe as anywhere else in the world, that there are very stringent security arrangements in place, and would he like to confirm that these will stay in place so long as the threats to which we are accustomed come?
I'm happy to give my honourable friend that assurance. A great deal of effort has gone into it to ensure that our aircraft and indeed all other modes of transport are entirely safe. And my honourable friend is quite right. There's no question of people in this country being intimidated by terrorism. I hope very much that the usual clutch of visitors will come to this country. They will find their usual warm welcome here.
Mr. Speaker, is it not clear to the right honourable gentleman that with unemployment rising and output and investment falling, his high interest rate policies have pushed Britain back into slump again? Will he not now change those policies before he inflicts further damage on British jobs, British enterprise and British competitiveness?
I must say to the right honourable gentleman, the thrust of policy is geared to dealing with the principal economic problem in front of us, and that is the reduction of inflation, so that the economy may again begin to grow. That is the thrust of policy, and it will continue to be so.
Mr. Kinnock.
But, Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister tell us how on earth cutting investment combats inflation? Isn't it obvious to him that weakening British industry now will weaken the British economy in the future?
As the CBI said yesterday in its report, it is encouraging that most employers expect to maintain spending on innovation and to maintain or increase spending on training. The substantive point the right honourable gentleman must recognise is that what really destroys the authority of investment in this country is inflation when it gets out of hand, and when people can see that investment will not yield a proper reward.
Doesn't the Prime Minister acknowledge that if British industry is to begin the recovery in the course of this year, he's going to have to cut interest rates now and find a more sensible way of restraining consumption? What's happening now is ruinous.
When it is appropriate to reduce interest rates, we will do so. I remind the right honourable gentleman that he was urging us to join the exchange rate mechanism immediately at a time when the exchange rate was 2.95. We will reduce interest rates when it is appropriate to do so.
Mr. Andrew Hunter.
Number two, sir.
We have made our concern known very clearly to the Soviet authorities, in particular about the actions of Soviet troops in Vilnius and Riga and their tragic consequences. We believe the Soviet authorities should withdraw their troops and negotiate with the elected authorities in the Baltic states about their aspirations.
Mr. Andrew Hunter.
In the light of the Soviet Union's oppressive policies in the Baltic states, can my right honourable friend confirm that one of the factors that will determine future UK aid will be the Soviet Union's acknowledgement of the Baltic states' people's right to self-determination?
We have always supported the right of the people of the Baltic states to decide their future status through negotiation with the Soviet Union. That will continue to guide our policy in the future.
Mrs. Margaret Ewing.
Mr. Speaker, is the Prime Minister aware that President Landsbergis will be hosting a conference entitled A Free Lithuania in Europe between the 7th and 16th of February in Vilnius, and concurrently with that will run a national poll to establish changes within the constitution of the state of Lithuania? Does he not agree that such a conference would be an ideal opportunity for an all-party delegation from this House to visit the Baltic states to see what is happening, and would he give personal consideration to such a move?
Well, I'm grateful to the Honourable Lady for her suggestion. I think that is a matter for honourable members and not for me.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Can my right honourable friend make it perfectly plain to the Soviet authorities that aid to the USSR as a unitary state is conditional on the maintenance of human rights and democratic freedoms within the constituent republics as they now are?
I have previously done that, as my honourable friend will know. But I must add, in addition to that, that over the last few years we have invested a great deal of time and effort, as has the United States, in improving the relationship and atmosphere with the Soviet Union. I do hope we can suspend judgment on some of the activities until we have further information. What appears to be happening in Vilnius and Riga is quite unacceptable, but I hope we can suspend judgment until we see matters more clearly. But we do yet again make clear to the Soviet Union that our support for Mr. Gorbachev is a question of support for him and his reforms, not for repression.
Mr. Jimmy Donaghy.
Number 3, sir.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Donaghy.
Is the Prime Minister aware that there is total support in his concern for the welfare of British troops in the Gulf? Will he put his money where his mouth is and give councils the money they need to relieve our troops in the Gulf of their poll tax burden?
As I indicated to the House the other day, authority is already there for local authorities to relieve troops during their period there.
Mr. Cormack.
Will my right honourable friend have a word with the chairman of the Post Office this afternoon about the supply of the blue letter forms on which families write to forces in the Gulf? Is he aware that the families of the Staffordshire Regiment have been complaining that these forms are not readily available in many rural post offices?
I can say to my honourable friend that more have been distributed because of concern about that particular matter. I should say that some 600 sacks of mail are being moved each day to and from the Gulf. It is a massive operation, and honourable members will have seen on television some of the difficulties there are in actually delivering it.
Mr. Jeremy Corbyn.
Before, Mr. Speaker.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Corbyn.
Will the Prime Minister spend some time today to consider the effects of 13 days of this war in the Gulf, of the deaths of service people, of massive losses of Iraqi civilians, of environmental destruction throughout the region, and the loss of some civil liberties in this country, and accordingly join with King Hussein of Jordan and with the Pope in calling for a ceasefire in this war to enable the problems of the region to be addressed peacefully, since they will all be there at the end of the fighting.
It is not the Allies who ensured that the problems of the region could not be solved peacefully. It is Saddam Hussein, and it is perfectly clear what needs to be done before they can be addressed peacefully.
Dr. Michael Clark.
Number 5, sir.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Dr. Michael Clark.
Would my right honourable friend confirm that the coalition forces in the Gulf are striving to uphold United Nations resolutions, and that it is to be hoped, therefore, that as many members of the United Nations as possible will contribute towards this effort? Would he agree that there is every indication at the present time that this will happen, and it is to be hoped that our friends and allies, particularly those who have not sent forces to the Gulf, will recognise their responsibilities and find ways of contributing to this war effort?
I do agree with my honourable friend. A number of governments have already made financial contributions towards the cost of the forces in the Gulf, and a number of others have announced their intention to do so. I understand Germany has made such an announcement just today. We're grateful for that and will be in touch with the governments concerned.
Ashton.
The Prime Minister confirmed that the objectives of the coalition forces in the Gulf remains to secure the liberation, peace and stability of Kuwait, and does not extend to the occupation and dismemberment of a defeated Iraq.
I am happy to confirm to the right honourable gentleman our war aims. We've made those clear consistently. They are those set out in the United Nations Security Council resolutions. They have been and remain the aims of the Allies.
Mr. Colonel Gregory.
Number 6, sir.
I am making plans for a series of visits to all parts of the country and very much hope to include North Yorkshire amongst them.
Mr. Colonel Gregory.
Mr. Speaker, would my right honourable friend encourage those banks and building societies who are offering mortgages to homeowners in North Yorkshire to extend the facility to European currency unit mortgages, thereby reducing the interest rate by some 3%?
Banks and building societies, of course, have the capacity to do that at present. It is a matter for their judgment whether they do so, and, of course, for mortgage borrowers whether they seek such a facility.
Bill O'Brien.
In the course of the visit to North Yorkshire, would the Prime Minister take note of the importance of the link from the A1 servicing North Yorkshire to the M1 to ease the congestion of traffic on the A642 through Alton and Rothwell? Will he make it easy to have the link road?
I will do better than that. I will tell my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Transport, what the honourable gentleman said.
Geoffrey Dickens.
Prime Minister, are you aware that... Are you aware... Prime Minister...
Order. I have sympathy for the honourable member. Give him a fair hearing. Mr. Dickens.
Prime Minister, are you aware...
Is he aware?
Order. Well, order. Why not proceed with the question? I think we've got the first bit.
Is the Prime Minister aware that my eldest son, Clive, signed on for the Gulf last week? And this week...
Order. Or did he do it in Yorkshire? That's the point. Please come on.
Is this not more commendable than a lot of the yellow-belly Labour MPs who refuse to serve?
Absolutely spoiled a good opportunity, I think. Mr. Dennis Skinner.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Mr. Skinner.
Will the Prime Minister, when he's travelling round North Yorkshire, pay a visit to York? And will he take note of the fact that the Conservative Club is having a closing down sale in York because it's gone bankrupt as a result of the government's business rate having gone up from £5,000 to £15,000? Is this the government's policy of carrying out a classless society by closing down Tory clubs in marginal seats? However, every cloud has a silver lining. When Labour gets into power, we're going to abolish the poll tax. There'll be jobs in York, in Derbyshire and everywhere else in Britain.
But not, I think, for most people working today, for they will have retired long since.
Richard Holt. Number 8.
I refer my honourable friend to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Mr. Holt.
This year, the Northern Regional Health Authority are receiving the largest sum of money that they've ever had. This is welcome news in the north of England, and with 10.2% increase on last year, it means that the people in the north of England are getting a marvellous deal from this government. And in particular, there will be the opportunity for the increased capital investment of a new hospital in my constituency, which has been awaited for over 10 years.
I'm very pleased to learn that. I'm always pleased when my honourable friend is pleased. He's a doughty fighter for the North and has been for many years.
Diane Abbott.
Will the Prime Minister confirm that there is nothing explicit in the appropriate UN resolutions which would authorise an Allied invasion of Iraq? And will he accept that although there is a widespread consensus in this House and internationally to see Saddam Hussein leave Kuwait, there is no such consensus for an Allied invasion of Iraq to smash its military regime with all the casualties and all the damage to its economic infrastructure that would result?
Resolution 678 authorises all necessary means to implement the objective of freeing Kuwait and restoring peace and security to the area. I say to the Honourable Lady, it is at this stage quite impossible to determine in detail precisely what that may mean. We will need to judge that in the light of circumstances and judge our actions against the Security Council resolutions.
10-minute rule motion, Mr. Dennis Canavan.